SC Media is proud to present this month's CISO Stories program, hosted by yours truly, Jessica Hoffman. This is a show where CISOs share tales from the trenches and unpack leadership lessons learned along the way. Listen to previous CISO Stories podcast episodes at CISOstoriespodcast.com. Are you a cyber professional who enjoys writing policy documents or building checklists or creating documents from scratch? Do you have endless amounts of time and money to focus on developing tools and templates, or would you rather do the work of protecting your organization? The Cyber Risk Collaborative has developed new resource toolkits, which are CISO developed and topic curated guidance, tools, and templates to save your team tens of thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours of work. Visit CISOstoriespodcast.com/CRC to sign up for the community and get your toolkits. Greetings, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of CISO Stories Podcast. You got me, your host, Jess Hoffman, here today on this very cold winter day. Oh my goodness. And we have Gavin Reid joining us as well as our special host, for the month. What's up, Gavin? How you doing?
Doing good. Thanks so much for having me on the CISO Stories podcast. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for putting your hat in the ring. I know we haven't met before, but it was really great speaking with you. And sounds like you're doing a lot of really cool stuff over there at Human. You want to tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. Yeah, I'll introduce myself. I started doing security at the Johnson Space Center at NASA many, many years ago. More recently, I was the CISO of Recorded Future for about 5 years, and I've been with Human for about 3 years now. Human is a platform that protects other platforms against bot and automated attacks. And this is sort of key. It's integral to a lot of some of the privacy issues that we've seen coming to bear. Like a really good example of that would be, with the advent of AI and, large language models, we're seeing, groups, people, all over wanting to kind of start their own large language model, chat GPT like service. And in order to do that, they have to get tons of data. They have to scrape tons and tons of data. So there's a bunch of websites that are out there that provided data for, their specific customers and for specific customer uses that are now sort of being scraped on the internet. And a lot of people may not agree with that. They may not think that's a good use case for their data, and they, may, have definite concerns about it being used outside of the concepts that they wanted people to use them. So we, we're in line. We integrate directly with these major platforms in order to protect them for automated behaviors like account attacks. Things like scraping, things like any sort of ability to misuse the website in any way whatsoever.
Yeah, well, we were talking about that the other day. I was reminded of, I Google myself, I'm sure you do too, periodically. And so, a website came up that had all of my work information, work history, and it was just scraped from LinkedIn. And I'm like, why would anybody do this? Right. But to your point, there's companies out there that are scraping, whether they have malicious intent or not, but they're still doing it for purposes, as you mentioned, that wasn't intended, right? I put my information out there for LinkedIn. So let's talk about that a little bit more. You mentioned how AI chatbots have been making that a little bit more easier. Scraping has been around for quite some time. So in your opinion, or what you've seen, how has the advancements of artificial intelligence enhanced that type of functions or features?
Well, for one, as I mentioned earlier, it's enhanced the need, right? People need a big train, they need data to train their large language models on, right? Where does that data exist? It exists on the internet today, right? And I'll give you another example. Let's say you're a real estate company and you have real estate listings of all of the new houses that are for sale. Now, you may pay a lot of money for those listings, right? And that's part of, the sort of sunk business costs. Other people can scrape that data not pay anything at all because you want to, have that data available for, public consumption, and then reuse it without having to pay that. So they have a competitive advantage over you by doing something that's sort of quasi legal at this point.
So it's about money.
At the end of the day, yeah, this is what's, driving a lot of these activities. It's, how do we take advantage of what's out there and make money from it?
So you were highlighted recently for some work you did combating against BadBox, which when we were talking about this as well, again, it's not anything new that there's backdoors in software and hardware that we receive usually from nation states, but the good old pick up a USB in a parking lot and having some malicious toolkits on there kind of thing. So let's tell the listeners about the BadBox experience.
Yeah, I mean, this is a perfect example of how, even in your home doing normal things, your privacy may be not protected in the ways that you think. So the Bad Box operation, it was based out of China, and what they've done is they've sold off-brand mobile connected tablets, connected TV devices, on the popular online retailers that we buy stuff from. And these, they're Android based devices, and they came preloaded with malware known as Triada. And, once you buy this device, as soon as you plug it in, it makes a connection out to China and it downloaded a bunch of modules. And this is all happening behind the scenes. So let's say, you have a connected TV device. Like, it's like a Roku, but it's not a Roku. It's a cheap Android device. You plug it in, and then it downloads these modules behind the scene in order to take advantage of your network, your house, to commit fraud. And a couple of the, a couple of the big ways that we saw that they were doing that is one, residential proxies. So they could open up your home network as a residential proxy where they sell access to your home network to, again, other criminals to commit more fraud, but it looks like it's coming from you. And or they can just monitor what's going on in your network and see what you're doing and take, if you're logging into your business sites and other things, they can take advantage of that. And then, the way that we first saw this is through ad fraud. So what they're doing is they have a couple of, apps that are behind the scenes going and involved in sort of clicking on ads, looking like they're an actual consumer. It kind of looks like it's coming from your house. So you're viewing an ad on a particular ad and app, and in doing that, just doing massive ad fraud. So this is the way, the first way that they monetize these boxes. So these are hundreds of thousands of devices that are spread out all over the world. And they're all, clicking on ads, doing things in the background. So they, like you've probably heard of the early days, they would have these, shops in China with just hundreds of mobile phones, and they were all, doing ratings, doing reviews, clicking on ads, sort of generating money, because every ad gets clicked on costs a certain amount of money, depending on the ad and where it's placed. And in doing that, sort of creating fraudulent, generating fraudulent money. Now, if those devices are coming out of China today, they probably get blocked by companies like ours and others that, protect the ad networks. But if they're coming from your home network, and the majority of the stuff that comes from your home network is legitimate traffic. So it's only a small minority that ends up being this fraudulent stuff. And they have that sort of spread in this complete, very, very distributed network all over the world, literally hundreds of different countries involved in this, then they're extremely successful. So like, we saw, I think, a couple 100,000 devices. There were, billions per day of ad requests that were going through this device, all of which were, generating some form of cash for the bad guys. And, what we do when we see this is we work with our partners, we have big, good relations with Google and other people that are involved in the ad network. And we basically shut these guys down, right? So what we did is, we blocked, we looked at what they were doing. We looked at the capabilities. We shared information on the IOCs and the sort of techniques that they were using, and we blocked them. So we blocked their capabilities of making money. We did that. They they tried another tactic to see if they could get around. We blocked that too. And then the very next day, what we saw is the command and controls, again in China, all these hundreds of thousands of devices around the world, they got sent a command to delete these modules, these fraud modules, and to just wait. So they
Wow.
knew that they'd been seen. They knew that this was relatively lucrative for them. I mean, we're talking millions of dollars. That they made over this. They said, okay, we'll switch off for a little bit, and we'll turn on later at a different time when hopefully no one's paying attention.
Talk about privacy. So even though it was maybe their main goal was to click on the ads and generate money and all those things, they could still see other private information or identifiable information about the users of these boxes, right?
Yeah, and let's be clear, these were all over. So we saw them in schools. We saw them, all
I was going to
over the
ask,
U.S.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like corporate was, so it wasn't just necessarily residential. So you said schools, so
Yeah,
organizations,
schools,
large, small.
corporations, in particular, like what we saw, like when we started investigating this, it was sort of, coming off the COVID area, and a lot of schools in the U.S. had bought tablets for the people to use. And now you can imagine if you're a school with limited budget, you can go and buy, an Apple tablet that's like $900. It doesn't have any BadBox, or you can go and buy a no-named Android tablet for $50 or $80. So we saw a lot of schools heavily impacted with this, where they bought these cheap tablets, and they were unbeknownst to them, more stuff was running on them than they would like. So it's really cool when sort of an industry consortium, including human, can get together and actually disrupt one of these events, and kind of helps everyone out to some degree. Yeah.
Yeah, no shade on Android, but yeah, definitely more advantageous to these organizations that have a limited budget. So that's such a great
Yeah,
point.
and let's be clear. This is Android OS, right? So it's open source. Anyone can do whatever they want. This isn't, tablets that are made by Google, or these are not. I think what do they have, certified Play Store devices that you can buy that Google will certify. None of those were impacted, but you can do whatever you want with the Android operating system. It's open source, and people have done that.
So the organization that or the company that was selling these tablets. So yeah, could you how did you find out about this? Like what
So
triggered?
the first way we found out about it is there was we saw a lot of ad fraud that was coming through, and we didn't really understand, who was generating it, how it was being done. And so we sort of worked our way backwards, and we saw like a commonality as we started looking. So we see the ad network, through the network telemetry that our company, is party to. And as we started working our way backwards to find out what the source was, typically the source would be maybe a bad application or a bad, seller or whatever. We started to see some commonality in device types, which was unusual, because normally it's just, it's ad fraud. It happens everywhere. It doesn't really matter what your device is. Well, no, these had like it was like a T95 Android connected TV device, which is, I think, is the first device that we looked at that was impacted by this. And so what we did is we went and bought a few of them. We thought, okay, well, let's buy some and check them out. And that's when we saw, we do this in a lab environment. We plug it in, see this connection going out to China. We can see, we do some before and after diffs of the device itself, and we saw these modules being added. And then we have folks like on my team that do reverse engineering, and so they would go and reverse engineer and find out exactly what these modules are, exactly what they do. There was, in the first iteration of this, we found, there was the ad fraud module that I'd mentioned before. There was a proxy module which opened up your home network as an open sort of proxy for them to sell. And of course, they have a secondary service where they sell access to these devices to anyone that wants to buy. And then there was, things like Gmail. So they could set up Gmail. So if they wanted to send emails or do stuff like that, there was WhatsApp. So they could set up like communications from your device. So they had a bunch of, it was like almost like a Swiss Army knife of fraud. Now, the only two that we saw them using were the proxy and the ad fraud. But we've been following as the, more recently they've sort of moved and they're doing some different things. And we've seen them do like SMS phishing and a number of other fraud activities. So it's really important to know if you put devices into your organization or your home, where they come from, and understand a little bit of the authenticity of said device. Sometimes it's, you get what you pay for.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It sounds like your crew had a lot of fun, like doing the reverse engineering. Well, it sounds fun. It would have been fun to do. As far as the type of data, like the data sets, you again mentioned it wasn't just residential necessarily or business. There's actually schools involved as well. And we know that education is one of the top industries that CISA is very concerned about when it comes to, data security, data privacy. What kind of data did you see? Was it like kids' assignments and grades and like addresses?
Well, understand we weren't monitoring, people's private networks, but what that did was give these people the ability to give anyone they wanted access to those networks. So if they, and they were selling this, right? So, for example, if, you went on, they had, websites again. Chinese, you wouldn't really know about them unless you were a criminal. So it's not like you're just going to come across one of these, easily. But we looked at them, and you pay a certain amount of money, not too much, and then you can specify specifically, where you want your proxy to be. You can give them, there's some optionality, and then when you have access, you see anything that's going on in that network, everything that's going on in that network that particular host can see. So it's certainly scary, especially given just the broad nature of this. Now, again, what we saw is that they were using this to convert into easy cash. But that doesn't mean that other things were happening, behind the scenes that go a little that are more insidious, and certainly the abilities to be able to do that stuff are pretty easy.
Yeah, that's just so scary. I mean, again, I don't think the concept of having a backdoor for devices is new, right? But if we're looking at it like our Amazon Fire Stick or whatever, not saying that that's a concern, but like pretty much every household has that, and a lot of them have like the jailbroken quote unquote, that bypass some security features or some functionality that's there for privacy related concerns. So just personally, when we were talking about this, I was like, wow, that could be in my house. That could be in my neighbor's house. So it is really scary to think about it, even if that wasn't the intent of these particular hackers or adversaries to, monitor the traffic for other things than ads. But certainly, it just kind of hit home like, this is real. And as security, I'm sure we're skeptical anyway, right, Gavin?
Well, everyone says like, hey, don't put, these IoT devices on your network that you don't trust, right? But we haven't seen real examples of these being exploited in mass like this. And so obviously, this, when we see something, we probably don't have the complete picture. It may be the tip of the iceberg, but it really does give you pause to think about, like, I really need to, pay attention to the authenticity of devices that I put on my network, and that I can't always assume good intent, because again, let's be clear here. So these were backdoored somewhere in a factory in China, right? And then they were resold through retailers here in the United States and elsewhere. The resellers that were selling these had no idea they were backdoored, so they're not like trying to rip people off or do anything bad. They're just selling devices with no idea of what's actually in there. And if, as an end user, one, it's a factory backdoor, so it's on the firmware. There's no way you could fix it. If somehow you detected it, there's no way you can fix it. We talked deeply with the folks in Android, and there is no easy way for an end user to fix it. The only way is to not have the device, to throw the device away, or to have not bought it in the first place. So it's definitely a scary thing, and especially if you see how widespread and how ubiquitous, and again, not just in the U.S. but all over the world, these devices were. There's a lot of capability for bad.
A lot. Yeah. Well, thank you for all the work you did on that, you and your team. It sounds like it was a pretty massive and intense project, and certainly for the greater good. I'm sure you got a lot of accolades and a lot of happy people that no longer have those devices on their network and are no longer susceptible to that attack.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it has started people like we saw. It was the Electronic Frontier sent a note to the FCC saying, "Hey, we should do something. Look at this research." And then we saw, I think, most recently in December, the German government actually sinkholed all of the related domains to protect the German people against this. So it's definitely, it's one of these things where it's kind of like a snowball rolling down the hill, and as it gets momentum and more people sort of realize it, then we get better at disrupting the activities of these fraudsters.
Yeah, interesting you mentioned Germany. I know they take privacy very, very seriously. You can't even take pictures, people in the background that, is considered illegal, without their consent, of course. So, yeah, that's excellent work. Excellent work, Gavin. So we have a few minutes left, and I thought it would be interesting if you want to share. Maybe I heard that you went through a PCI 4 audit recently. How was it? Was it fun? Did you love it? What'd you
Well,
learn?
we've been going through the self attestation for PCI 3 and earlier versions. Um, and we obviously, as a security company, don't handle credit cards ourselves, but we create infrastructure for people that do. And so we felt like we want to, be, as compliant as we possibly can. So we went through the first time PCI, the new PCI 4 audit. That's the most recent PCI, and this one, yeah, it was good because it sort of validated what our team's been doing, and we've been working in the right places. And it was a little nerve wracking because we knew that there were some higher expectations with PCI 4. But in particular, there are two areas that PCI 4 has changed, and these two different requirements are, I think it's like 643 and 1161, and it's really around management of scripts that would run in a browser if someone visits your site. So if you're a large internet site, like if you're of CNN or whatever, you probably have 1,000 scripts that are sideloaded when you go visit that site. And what PCI has said now is that it's up to you to manage those scripts, because these scripts, when they get sideloaded into your browser, can read a lot of activity that's going on. And so this has always been a little bit kind of behind the scenes in a way that hackers have used to take advantage of exploits or sites, and been very successful. And the sites themselves have sort of had a hands-off approach. Well, PCI is changing that. They're saying if someone loads something on your site, then you're responsible for understanding what that is, understanding where it comes from, understanding if it's malicious and what it's doing, and you have to verify these scripts. And if they change, or if they change where they come from, you've got to check them out and show that you verified, and have a sort of trail behind you of how you do that. So, certainly that I think that's a key area where regulation is actually driving better security controls. And to that end, our company actually has created a tool which does exactly that. So people can load this in. It'll be able to see all the different scripts. It'll be able to understand a little bit about what the script's doing, and then make it available in a way that's easy for you to go through and check and keep that sort of trail of evidence that you're paying attention to what's actually going on in your site. So that's for 643, and then something similar with just the HTTP headers in 1161. So those were two that were a little bit more complex, but luckily we had a head start because our company creates tooling to help our customers deal with this.
So spending that, or sorry, supporting privacy, just understanding where your data is going, who has access to your site, making sure that they're authorized, or they're not malicious intent, as you mentioned. So Yeah, that's pretty cool. We've been seeing that more so over the past several years with security and privacy being one. I like to say, anytime I say security, it's security and privacy because I feel like, even with all the NIST Rev 5 for 853 and just all the other recent publications, privacy and security are completely intertwined. So it's really cool to see that, PCI as well and the work that you're doing, obviously is critical in securing and keeping us our data safe, continuously safe. So thank you so much for that. I got one last question for you, Gavin. This is a fun question I like to ask all my hosts. And it seems like you've had a lot of experience in security and been very successful. So I'm wondering, Gavin, what would you right now tell 18-year-old Gavin? What advice would you give him?
Maybe be a little less serious. Maybe take some time off now and then. I think perhaps take things a little less seriously and make sure that you have good work-life balance. Because I think I've sort of come to that over time, but it's taken me a long time to do that.
Yes, I don't think anybody's ever said that, but I totally love that. But if you weren't so serious all the time, maybe you wouldn't be doing all the great work you're doing too. But it's
Yeah,
important to have that vacation time. I know you're not on vacation now. Maybe soon, somewhere warm, huh?
yeah. Somewhere that's not snowing outside would be really good.
Yeah. Well, you can keep the snow. Ohio can keep the snow, but Pennsylvania doesn't need it. We're good. Well, thank you so much, Gavin, for joining us. It's been really cool to hear about all of your experiences and what you're doing over there at Human. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, if you go to humansecurity.com, you can see tons of detail on this and the other 11 investigations over the last couple of years that we've done. We have a blog. We've got a lot of material about the different tooling that we do. Again, we're a platform that helps other platforms protect themselves against these sort of attacks. And if you look at it like from a security perspective, people should be able to, you know, fire up their web browser, go onto a website, do things, use loyalty points, create accounts without being compromised, without, that should be sort of table stakes. And unfortunately, we're not there yet. And our organization's really good about getting us there. So love to chat to anyone more about that. Thanks.
Excellent. Yes. Well, thank you, Gavin. And thanks everybody for listening. I hope you got some of those gems that Gavin dropped, and don't be too scared. It is what it is out there. Just be cautious and weary and safe. So until next time, everybody, take care and thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in for this episode of the CISO Stories podcast. Please subscribe to the CISO Stories podcast and you will receive a new episode on the second Monday of each month.